Hey guys, this is Lionheart, one half of Subjectivity UK, and guess what?
It's finally here!
It's finally here! The long form content you've all been dying for. You've been messaging us, sending us emails, and sliding in our DMs. Well, guess what? We're finally giving you what you want, and it's super exciting.
We are finally bringing the wider conversation to the wider audience. You guys, 15 to 20 minutes of great content. We're uncovering a bunch of topics, so make sure you watch all the way till the end.
Today's show is called Getting Therapy, Dispelling the Stigma, okay? When you think about it, so many of our friends have all these preconceptions about what therapy means, what getting a therapist makes us look like. Well, we're gonna be talking about the fears, phobias, solutions, strategies, everything in between to make sure you understand how we can ameliorate the perception of getting therapy. I didn't know there was more than one type of therapy, okay? So, there's art and creative therapy, which is actually using an art form, music, drama to actually help you through the process. Some people find it easier to not use words. I honestly didn't even know about that, right? Hands up if you knew about that. Oh, you just make me look bad today, you know? Alright, cool, fine. So there's behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which Charles is also aware of and does himself. Family and relationship therapy, okay? We might have to do a show on that alone, alright? I think that, we have to do a show on that alone, right? Solution-focused therapy. Now, for someone like myself who's super ambitious, I never thought there was a person I could professionally hire to help me find the solutions. I'm always like so dependent on myself. There are people around me that I like to speak to, but I don't feel like I can depend on them to find solutions. So that's also another one. Transpersonals. Anyone heard of that one before? Hands up. You know what? I just didn't want anyone to put their hands up, you know? Alright, cool. You three are dope, alright? So this is more about the spiritual side of things, alright? Which I think is really good. So there's therapy for everyone, alright? There's different ways to actually approach someone to learn what's best for them. So just keep that in mind. Jay-Z, over. Alright, does anyone know who he is? If you don't, I'm gonna have an argument with you the whole show, right? One of my favorite rappers, I have so much admiration for him, even though he kind of cheated on Beyonce, but we ain't gonna talk about it today. We ain't gonna talk. It's not my business! It's not my business, alright? So, hands up if you think he went to therapy.
Marriage counseling.
You know when you know that business, innit? You know when you know that business. Alright, hands down. Hands up if you think he doesn't go to marriage counseling. Awesome, press next. So, he grew so much from the experience alone, alright? Next slide. Halle Berry, can I get a little, whoa! What's all this hate around here? Wait, hold on, wait. Hands up for yes, Halle Berry got therapy. 100%. You'll say it like she needs it. Oh! This is a safe space, alright? Hands up for no, you don't think she went to therapy. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, everyone who said no was wrong. She does go to therapy. Rest the next one. I've done therapy on an as-needed basis since I was probably 10 years old, okay? 10 years old. Yeah, since the age of 10, alright? It was really interesting. Press the next one. Wait. So wait. I put Charlamagne the God up and Jay-Z. I got marriage counseling, I got yeah? Michael B. Jordan, hey. He never went to therapy. He only done therapy. Alright, it could be sex therapy. We didn't even speak about that yet. Oh, your eyes going wide now, isn't it? Okay, hands up if you went to therapy. Hands up. You're not being shy with this. You know I'm looking at you as well, you know. Alright. Okay, hands down. Hands up if you think you didn't go to therapy. You scratching your head, that don't count. Alright, hands down. Everyone who said he didn't go to therapy was wrong, alright? So talking to somebody who just helped me out a lot. Next slide. Okay, last but not least. All I have is Wait, is this because of Destiny's Child or just a relationship? Really? Oh, just yet you just like alright, hands up for yes, she went therapy. Wow, that's like unanimous. Okay, hands down. Any hands for no? No? Okay, you're all right, so they go to therapy. I realized I didn't want to try to figure things out by myself. I personally relate to that so much because like I said, I'm someone who's so dependent on myself. If any of you know me in like a personal realm when it comes to poetry or to succeed in life, I am so dependent on reaching my goals and ambitions. I kind of think I don't want to put all this weight on my shoulders and someone else's. So when she said I didn't want to figure out things by myself, I think that we all should work as a community because that's why we're here in some essence, right? You don't know everyone in this room, but collectively we're coming into a space to to talk about the things in our experiences and hopefully enlighten someone else, right? Awesome. All right, I found out so many interesting things. I'm gonna share me first, and I'm gonna share you guys. Is that cool? Yeah? So I found out that my view on therapy wasn't one that I created myself, right? And I know that I'm a product of my environment, but I was a product of my parents' environment, one that I wasn't even in yet. So subsequently, I became a parent of their perception, right? Or a child of their perception, more to say. So we was talking about like our family, like about our dads and our mothers and what they thought. And I realized that me approaching someone else about therapy initially made me feel like all my data is going to be shared on Facebook to someone. Like it was going to be sold to like a country that I don't know. Like I feel like there wasn't a trust factor there. You can listen, I'm laughing too. I was like, what? Where is my data going to be shared to? There was such this apprehension, right, about like confiding in someone about what's going to happen now. Now that I'm exposed, now that I'm vulnerable to someone who doesn't know me or love me like my parents, but weirdly enough, I love my parents, but I wouldn't sit down and talk to them. That's me personally, right? So why wouldn't I go to a therapist and talk to them, even though like, I don't have a love for them? It's in their profession to want to help me. The more they help me, the more I'm like, hey, it's my money. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So that's what I learned about myself. Ain't no one to clap. You know, ain't supportive anymore. Where's my? That's right. Okay.
No, so we're saying how with our white counterparts, finding a therapist is already hard enough to find somebody that fits your desired personal needs. But then for people of color, we have these other layers that we have to work through. For example, can they relate to growing up as a black person, growing up as a Muslim, growing up with immigrant parents, growing up not, on minimum wage, not saying that, our white counterparts don't experience some aspects of that, but there are more layers to unveil for us. I'm going to be so honest and jump in. Listen, if you're from a Caribbean household, let me know what household you are from. But from a Caribbean household, anything that happens in the house... Say it with me now. Anything that happens in the house... Stays in the house.
Everybody now! Right? It's like this unwritten but spoken everyday rule, right?
Yeah.
And you get told this, like if something happens, like let's say you get licks. I got licks. Listen, I'm saying it on camera. I don't care. I got licks. But you ask my mom, me never lay a hand on you, darling. It happens, right? But you just somehow knew the accent was terrible. Don't judge me, right? You just somehow knew when you went to school or your friends, you could tell your friends, because your friends ain't telling no one, but you wouldn't tell anyone else that you got beats, right? So there's always this unspoken rule about just keeping things inside, especially within the black community. But again, it's not just us. It's everyone is going through it, right? There's probably different levels, but we're not here to discuss those levels. We're here to discuss, where can we find the people that we can confide in, right? Everyone should have their tribe, right? Can you just share what you shared with us before in the group around like how like your parents' views kind of impacted your view on therapy?
Yes. I was saying that my mum definitely felt defensive. So whenever I spoke about wanting to go to therapy or wanting to explore therapy or talking about it, she took it really personally. So she, I think, responded to it and felt like she'd done something wrong. And that defensiveness definitely came up as her telling me that I didn't have anything wrong, and like it was I was made to be the problem. And then my dad's response to therapy was definitely like very conspiratorial, like, well, you know, he was like, they're in a profession, they're making money out of you not being well, so why would they want you to get better? And if you just always go to therapy, you're always going to need therapy. The more you have it, the more you'll need it, the more you'll become reliant on it. So it was all very negative.
I'm actually writing a blog post about your friends are not your therapists. Yes. And it's all about, because there's something called ego states, where we have the victim, the aggressor, and the rescuer. And it's that sometimes your friend become the rescuer and you become the victim. So what happens is your friend keep you, not knowingly, keep you as a victim, where you just nag and moan to them, you don't get help, and it's just a cycle. And all of you just stay in that state, you're playing that role. Once you decide not to be a victim, they have to find another victim. So it's a cycle of victimhood versus being a rescuer.
The way I'm going to start looking at my friendships after this, you know. A couple of my friends in the room right now, I'm thinking, yo, are you helping me or hindering me, you know?
Me, I'm all for therapy. Never used to be, but for me, I went to therapy when I was in a dark place. And the way I look at it and use therapy was more of an extension of my thoughts. So when I spoke to the therapist or counselor, however they wish to be titled, it was more along the lines of me speaking freely as the way that I'm thinking. And that person then helping me navigate myself through my thoughts to understand that and then deal with it. So it's something that I'm very strong and I believe heavily in.
You can give a round of applause. I'm going to sit up there. So can I ask you a question? What did your friends know that you went to therapy? Or was you aware of how they thought and decided not to tell them? I'm assuming that they didn't know.
Initially, I didn't know at all. Up until about 7 sessions in, when it finally clicked for me and made sense. I went reluctantly to begin with, so it was my ex-girlfriend at the time who was like, go, 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 go. And I was like, nah, I'm cool. But once I did go, I stuck it out, and then however many sessions in, it all clicked, all made sense, and that's when I was like, you know what, you should go. You should go, you should go. And now I'm speaking to family members, friends, etc. And I'm like, you know what, just try it out. Take 12 sessions free on NHS and actively just do your thing.
You know what's so interesting about what you just said? Now, there's a shame element that happens in my head when I think, oh, if I tell someone, especially one of my male counterparts, yo, I'm thinking of going to therapy, that they're going to be like, what's wrong with you, bruv? Like, initially, that's the conversation I have in my head. What you highlight to me is that if I go and receive help, I'm now aware that my friends need help too. Right? They don't want to be seeing themselves as a wound. And I think that's what's scary for them to realize that if I get help, I now know that you need help too.
Yeah, I said yes, because the struggle to understand the multiplicity of my identity, being a Nigerian, born in London, grew up in California, and just trying to understand what blackness means in 3 contexts, and how to straddle that or whatever people's projections are on me as to what that should look like, and having to find someone to actually speak about that too in an objective sense. From like the African perspective, it was more, I grew up in a household mainly of women and sisters, so I guess the masculinity element was something that they never really could kind of give an insight about in terms of what does that look like. And also because I was challenging a lot of those norms, which were also projected based on the lack of my father in that environment, and actually they wouldn't have been the best placed people to have those conversations with. So yeah, so it was just a multiplicity of these things and just never really having or feeling like I had anyone that could really understand all these nuanced facets of myself in a way that would provide a platform for me to engage and explore these thoughts in a very healthy and supportive way.
For me, I never had that experience because my street was my home, the whole yard. And the same way I could grieve, I could have shared my grievances with somebody up the road, at the same way I could have walk in at one random house and eat dinner, and then walk in at one, no, because, you understand? So it was a home in that sense. I could sleep at any house on the street, as long as I told my mother I was at that house.
So would you say it's a cultural thing then? Because ideally, like, again, we're both of Caribbean heritage, but my household was raised here. My household was raised in Jamaica. And even in like Grenada, like I probably know everyone in my area in Grenada. But I wouldn't go to like the next door and be like, hey, I'm going through something. Can I talk to you for a second? I probably don't even know their children's names or their name. Do you know what I mean?
Because you don't know them. Right. Whereas I grew up with them. Me and them kids go to school. We carpool to things. When somebody on the road, like when the lady who beside us wanted to buy a house, it's about 5 people on the house put together and lend her money for buy a house. That's the kind of community we're talking about.
I am one of the carers in my family for my youngest sister who has autism. And being a carer since I was like early teens was really difficult because I would have to say to friends, oh, I'm not able to come out this night because I've got to help look after my sister. And it's still the case today. And I did really like suppress it and suppress it. And I think that what made it easier was as I went through life, I met people who also had a sibling with autism. And it got to a point where I didn't even have to confide or say anything. If I wasn't having a good day, or maybe I didn't sleep, or if I was really upset that my sister had self-harmed or something, I just had to say, oh, she had a tantrum last night. And I didn't have to say anything else after that. That person knew what I needed. They knew what I needed to hear. They said the right things for me. And as Lee said, I felt like it was normalized. I felt like it was normal. Whereas before I felt like it wasn't normal. Nobody would understand my situation. Experienced friends in the past who would say, oh, you never come out. You know, just make me feel as though, like feel bad about my situation, when really it's a normal situation. It's just a different normal. And she is who she is, and I love her. And I just think having people around who can relate made it so much easier for me. I didn't even have to say anything. So that's my experience.
So the experiences that I've struggled to share are experiences where I felt shame for a range of reasons. So sometimes it might be because I felt responsible, situations where I felt sort of disrespected, where I haven't respected myself, situations where I feel like I kind of knowingly went into a situation knowing what the outcome would be, and I still made that choice. And I think those are really difficult because you feel such a sense of shame. But when you are brave enough to share those experiences anyway, there's a next level of healing that happens because you self-validate. Because when you share those experiences anyway, you send yourself a subconscious message to say that regardless of what state, regardless of what state you are in, you're still worthy of your own love.
Thank you so much. You see that community? Oh, these are your tissues. These are your yeah, you're trying. That community, thank you so much. There's a familiar narrative which I'm hearing, which is we all need to find our allies. And even in our social circles, it sounds like our friends may not know how to be allies towards us, rather than just taking up the space, but learning how to use that space to help us. Can we get a huge round of applause, please, for Maya Michelle and Esther Shirato? A round of applause. So, in fact, you know, I'm going to let you guys warmly introduce yourselves, all right? Let's hand the microphones over and let you introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Maya. Hi, I am a trainee clinical psychologist, very newly so, and I'm also a qualified psychological wellbeing practitioner, which in like normal terms, psychological wellbeing practitioners are people that you might see if you referred to the doctor for anxiety or depression, and that first stage of kind of short-term therapeutic support is what I was doing previously, and now I'm training to be a clinical psychologist, so kind of working with a broader range of so-called life like difficulties or experiences. Yeah, I'm finding out, I guess, what my kind of area of expertise will be and what I'll do in the future.
I'm a social worker and counsellor. I work in mental health. And as an AMP, I section people, so that's the shortened version, and I'm also a therapist. So I work in secondary mental health services with people that have various psychological disorders like schizophrenia, bipolar, personality disorder. And I've also founded a organisation called Frontline Therapist, which basically has two services. One service is where it matches Black and Asian individuals with Black and Asian qualified psychologists, counsellors and psychotherapists. And the other service is a low-cost multicultural counselling service. So if, you know, therapy can be quite expensive at times. So if you are feeling like I want to save a little bit of money, but I still want to invest in my mental health, then I can provide that service for you as well.
I guess one that I was talking about kind of in terms of my own experience of having therapy was that from that question about like the idea of like being the person that heals themselves and like you do it all by yourself. And I think I was kind of saying that I'd grown up with a lot of kind of trauma and difficult life experiences and had this idea projected onto me that I was this like amazing person that had like got through it all on my own. And then I think that was such a big part of my identity that it was really hard for me to imagine losing that. So like going to therapy, I think for a long time, even though I knew at this point I wanted to be a therapist, being on the receiving end of that felt like something that would like take away from my identity as being really strong and like resilient. So it felt like a success story to me when I actually went to therapy. I went to therapy for 4 years, so I like really did it. And yeah, like totally felt like that was like didn't take anything away from me, actually only strengthened my identity, made me feel more comfortable about celebrating all the people that have supported me along the way, that it was never just me. It was like my aunt, my grandma, my cousins, my social worker, my foster mum, like teachers, so many other people, and it didn't take anything from my identity to celebrate all of that, and it actually just made me feel so much more kind of comforted.
So for me, I went to therapy after like a really terrible relationship, and the key thing for me was when I met with my therapist, we spoke, I just shared my thoughts, and it was really great. And I remember her saying to me, the way you speak to yourself is really not nice, and you need to be kinder. And I remember sitting there thinking, I share my thoughts with people around me who have a similar background. She was like, you need to be nicer. And one thing I've carried through that is just being nicer to myself, because life is hard already. And that was really important, especially in that point of my life where everything was hard and I was hard on myself, and I just needed to be nicer. So it's changed my internal voice of how I speak to myself. And I always encourage my friends when they say things that are really like, whoa, I think if you're saying that to me, how are you speaking to yourself? So it's just mindfulness of that, and that's really important.
Thank you.
There's been lots of talk of self, and then there was words like we, and I think somewhere in that we need to kind of come up with some sort of definition of what that actually is. We were talking in the group here, and I was explaining that I went into therapy when I was in my young 20s under the advice of my manager at the time. And not to give you too much backstory, but you know, I had a colourful childhood. Decided to change my life. Went to university. Came out of university. Applied for lots of jobs. Found myself in a job with mental health. And quite quickly, I found that the way people were being treated in that system didn't sit well with me. And so one of my seniors at the time said, you should go and seek help, because he said, you know, when you have your own pain, it's really difficult to work with other people's pain, especially when it's unresolved. So I was like, I was unaware that I even had unresolved pain. Went and sat with a therapist, and unconsciously it brought stuff up, you know, so I'd go away and stuff would come up. And so like the gentleman over there said, you know, I became more aware of myself. And that journey never really stopped. But I think what I wanted to kind of bring that back to was this sense that the more you go on a journey of self-discovery, the more you realise there actually is no self. And actually there is only the collective, you know, and the more that you discover, the more that you become aware of your true nature, the more you recognise that true nature is in everyone else. And I think ultimately what stops us being our true self is fear, and it comes from insecurities of rejection and all these abandonment and all these issues that people end up having. But they're not too dissimilar, and actually that's why there is no separate, because we're all dealing with, you know, so when we talk about self and the we, I think we need to kind of be clear that there is no self.
So I think reluctancy to seek professional help can also come from not understanding that you actually even have an issue in the first place. I think some of the things that we go through, we see as normal. Everyone else goes through this, so this isn't necessarily something I would categorize as needing to seek help. So I was a teenage parent. I was pregnant when I was 16, and I had postnatal depression for 3 years, but I didn't know. I didn't have a connection to my daughter at all. She was just somebody that I raised because I had to do that, because who else was going to clothe her and feed her and do all of these things? But years later, I had therapy. I only just remembered that I had the therapy, but and I remember after that I just fell in love with her, and suddenly she felt like my daughter. She felt like I felt the love that all of these parents would talk about. I love my child, and I used to just look at them like, well, they're your child, of course you do, but I wasn't experiencing that kind of unconditional love that they had. I didn't know I had postnatal depression until years later. So, and at the time, I kind of associated how I felt with the fact, well, of course I feel this way. I'm a young parent. No one wants to be a young parent. So it just felt like a normal way to feel about a situation that I felt that I had put myself into. So I was saying earlier to these ladies that when you go through something and you feel like you're the cause, it almost feels like, well, that you deserve it. Why would you even speak to anyone? You've done this to yourself, as opposed to feeling anxious or feeling a certain way about something that maybe has been done to you, or just a feeling that has come on to you. So I would say that sometimes it's not even reluctancy, it's just not even being aware that this isn't something that you have to go through by yourself. So I would say that for me is kind of a key point.
The aim of therapy is for you to therapize yourself. So to have an internal therapist. So to change that critical thinking, that critical part which comes from our family, our parents, our culture, society, into what would my therapist say, until what would I say? And some people do. Some people do have therapy for all their lives. But I think, I think in therapy now, in psychotherapy, there's nothing like cure. It's more about having the options. So like someone said about triggering, there was a point you didn't know what triggered you, you just got triggered. Then now you know what gets triggered. And sometimes you still get triggered, but you know why you got triggered, and that's what's important. Sometimes you think you go therapy and you think, oh, I'm never gonna get angry. No, you're gonna get angry, but this time you're gonna go why you get angry, and you're gonna reflect on what led you there, and hopefully avoid those situations if need be. And I think that is what's important. Whether you can have a therapist that's a life partner in that sense, I think, yeah, you will end up internalizing the therapy. So the whole point of the therapy is to create that safe space between you and that person to really delve in deep. Depending on which therapy, it could just be about managing anxiety day to day. So it does depend, like someone said, different therapies. But the whole point is to take from what you've learned and to replicate it in your life.
I feel like if I go throughout life having cold versions of mental health, I should be able to say, yo, like, man, I got through this thing, and it just should be common knowledge that he should know what it is. Just like how everybody in here probably know about lime or honey. And if you're Jamaican, a shot of rum. You see what I'm saying? But so, that's why I feel like, you know what I mean? But it makes me think that why is it, I guess my question to the therapist is, why is it that the kind of base level, primary level of therapist knowledge, I guess, isn't common knowledge in the same way that physical remedies is commonplace?
First thing I was gonna say, I think people are doing that too much. I think they're pretending that they've got the common cold too much. That's why the result is that we're in this position right now. That's what I think is happening. I think it's the reverse. And the other thing is this whole thing of people saying they're suffering from mental health. Mental health, like, shouldn't it be mental health problems? I think sometimes we say mental health, it's like we're saying it's a problem. And I think we need to remember that mental health is a good thing.
I think the mental physical comparison, one thing that feeds into that also is that to respond to people who are having difficult experiences with their mental health requires emotional labour. And so I think that also means that you need people around you that have the capacity to hold that. And so I think that for me is where that kind of comparison slightly falls down. Or doesn't quite represent the reality. And also a quick shout out to mental health first aid, which is like a training. So this kind of thing that we're talking about people knowing how to attend to like difficulties in that way, it's an interesting thing to look into.
A question to the therapist. If one of us as an adult realizes that we have a parent who, for example, is going through symptoms of, say, postnatal depression that they haven't recognized, and it's impacting not even an adult, maybe, a young child or whoever, how would you advise a person to address that or even approach it with said mother or parent figure?
lack of insight is a big issue in general, but particularly in the black community, it's very, very difficult when you've got someone that's relapsed several times. I've put them on several sections and they're telling me I ain't got an issue. And what do you do then? It's a very, very difficult place to be in when you're working with someone who clearly needs help but doesn't think that they need help. But what I could encourage you to do is to speak to this person and just say, look, let's just talk about it. Let's just go to the GP. And just sometimes just telling them what it is, like someone said, oh, this is what I have. People just don't know. They hear postnatal depression, postpartum. People don't know what it is. It feels foreign. It doesn't feel like them. It could even feel normal. I was depressed for 10 years. I didn't even know it. So you just felt like that's just how you always was. Until I realized I was depressed. It was, again, retrospectively. I was like, oh, I was depressed. But because my depression was, I was always still doing things. I was always achieving. I wasn't in bed under the covers. I didn't think I was depressed. This person could be still doing the things that they have to do. They're not depressed. So there's different levels and varying degrees of whatever condition it is. But the first point of contact is to speak to the person, encourage them to speak to their GP because it is their health and they've got to autonomously seek that help because you can push them there and they will get, one, they could become resentful, and two, it'll become quite frustrating for the professionals because they can't work with them. They can't work with you trying to work with them. They can only really work with them through you as well.
And last words?
Oh yeah, I would just say, I would just say kind of like just go gently and like let them know that you're there to support them through it, and if they don't want to do that when they get there, then that's fine too, and that you'll be kind of coming away with them and just really gently kind of encourage and maybe share why you think that would be something that would be really supportive for them, or any stories that you have of where you've seen that be a supportive thing to do, and just kind of really gentle and open with the idea that maybe some help would be good. Framing it more about what they could get out of it that was positive, rather than what they need to change about themselves that's so negative. Yep. So if you're telling somebody that they need to go and get fixed because there's something wrong with them, that's much harder to hear than, actually, I think like you deserve some help and you deserve some support, and maybe we can get that together, you know, kind of letting it, therapy should be about finding more positives than necessarily getting rid of really negative things. Most things we don't necessarily need to get rid of, but we do need some help in understanding them and feeling more okay about them, you know, and being able to explain them to other people as well.
Thank you. Can we just get a huge round of applause, please? So we've just finished Subjectivity's Getting Therapy, Dispel the Stigma. I'm not gonna lie, I'm emotional. I may look drained, I'm not drained, I'm just full of so much emotion about what's happened. We had so many people get emotional with us today.
Yes.
Like the community that happened with us, like people being in tears and just everyone coming to support, really blew me away. Like to think that there are people who don't know each other and are still coming together, finding allegiance, being allies to each other is really, really supportive, and this makes me feel like we need to do so much more.
I think what we saw today was a beautiful testament to what subjectivity is all about, which is creating the community, making room for those wider conversations, and creating that space where people can share their perspectives without being judged or feeling like they're unqualified to speak on the things that matter to them the most, sharing their personal narratives.
Do you know what? One thing I'm going to say before we round this off, I just want to thank every single person who comes to our shows, especially when they see a title like therapy and it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to talk about this? You come into this space, you open yourselves up, and you make room for wider conversations. So thank you so much.
Thank you.